Hello and welcome. I'm Michelle Vandepas with GracePoint Publishing, and I'm thrilled because I got Rosy Aronson with me today. And you might know her from Human Design, Gene Keys, Walking the Fine Line, all these books you've got at rosyaronson.com. Welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Now, you're scheduled to be one of our keynote speakers at the Human Design Conference happening hopefully live September 2020, but if not live, definitely virtually, and then we'll go live sometime a few months after, right? We'll see how it all works out. We're taping this today right in the middle of stay-at-home orders with the coronavirus, but hopefully we're all seeing that going to lift here in the next few weeks. And so the thing is to be flexible. And one of your main messages, I think, is you can help guide people through challenging times like this, through chaos in the world, through something you called walking the fine line. And I want to start there. I just want to jump in. Did I get the name right? Walking the
fine line. Oh, that's
that sounds so interesting to me. It's like finding your own integrity. Tell me what that is.
Oh, thank you. Well, that is a question that I am still asking myself on a daily basis. It's kind of, I compare it to being on a tightrope where we think that it's a static thing, but actually it's a constant dance. I actually wrote that book in the early 90s, and I did it because I had been involved in a kind of a spiritual training program community for over 8 years. That was using a very powerful healing modality that was extremely intimate and all about healing separation. We were like doing deep breath work in warm water, and it was also my family. You know, it was my family, it was my community, it was my business. I was wearing a million different hats, as most of us were, which often happens in these alternative communities. And then there were some things that were happening that were not fully in integrity. You know, where the organizer of the training was, you know, he was basically a sex addict and was sleeping with clients and training participants and at the same time teaching about ethics. So like he had a conscious part of him that was very aware of these things, but unconsciously he was being driven by a core wound that he really had no control or grasp over. And then of course the teacher who he was organizing for was benefiting from his wounding patterns, right? Because he was attracting a lot of really wonderful, beautiful women into the training that were both in love with him and then also kind of afraid to speak out about some of these interactions that happened with him because they were also in a community family context and they didn't want to project outward or blame anybody for what was happening because we were all learning that you can't really see anything outside of yourself that doesn't exist inside, and all of those kind of new age catchphrases that were getting us both like out of victim consciousness, but in another way unconsciously making us victims even more so because we were losing our voice. So anyway, I'm just giving you a little bit of the backstory to why I wrote that book. I did it ultimately because I tried to make a change by speaking out and it didn't work. And I felt like I had to find a way to transmute that experience into something that could be supportive and helpful to others. And I had come from a background in kind of more traditional classical psychology here in the States, moved to Denmark, which is where I was participating in that particular community. And so a lot of my life has been about trying to bring the different worlds together because I'm very attracted to very alternative modalities and worldviews. But I think there's something from the more kind of traditional dynamic way of approaching relationship that gets lost in more kind of new age territory. So this is sort of my attempt to bridge those two worlds together.
I love that. And I want to just go down a rabbit hole for a minute with you.
Sure.
Because I was also involved with a couple of things in the 90s because that was a big breakthrough for metaphysics and New Age concepts.
Right.
Where in two different organizations, the men both had similar characteristics, right? Mm-hmm. And here's how I looked at it. I just want to explore this rabbit hole for a minute. There's something about the time and the place and the men at that time that were tapping into something, I think, that was extremely creative and spiritual that became a magnet of sexual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because creativity and spirituality and sexual energy are all sort of, it's this wonderful energy, right?
Yes.
And so I guess I'm wondering if there's any way just to kind of make sense of these men, and probably women too, but it tends to stand out in men in a different way, like holding the polarity of all this energy. Was it just so much energy that they couldn't contain it in a physical body, and this is how it expressed? I mean, I'm just interested, like, what are the other sort of metaphysical reasons? Because I was definitely involved in that sort of energy too in the 90s. So it's not just you, it was happening all over the world.
Yes, and I think it's been happening probably for thousands of years in spiritual settings, because we're working with energy, right? And this is why I'm so drawn to things like or the gene key, where we're looking at the intersection between the gift and the shadow, that often those
That's
two
it.
hand in hand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at groups of people gathering together and celebrating and amplifying gift energies, and not actually having the training or the understanding of how to work with them in ways that don't crossing boundaries, right? Because in order to have, like, one of the things I talk about is what it is to have an intact spiritual boundary, just from like a Gestalt perspective. And that requires not just the capacity to merge, but to have a really good kind of healthy sense of self and a healthy ability to interact with someone else, where you're navigating and you're negotiating how close people come, or how, when you have some distance, people need to both be able to come home and also to travel outwards. And sometimes, we kind of, when we have a slightly damaged boundary system, we get a little bit too on one side or the other. Some people are so contained that they don't know how to let energy in or to engage intimately with the other. Some people are so out there in their relationships that they don't know how to come home. And we need to be able to balance all of that in order to actually have a genuine spiritual connection. So what ends up happening, we have these like heightened experiences of connectivity where we're really dropping out of that sense of separation and experiencing our oneness. But these other aspects of our boundary systems haven't been fully worked through yet. And so then we end up getting into trouble, right? And I think we all, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just about, can we learn from it? Can we make just enough mistakes that we can actually use those mistakes as grist for the healing mill, and not such big mistakes that we end up really doing damage, which I think has happened. This is happening in all the religious, right? If you look at the Catholic Church, if you look in the Buddhist community, this kind of things has the crazy wisdom community, the Osho community. I don't know if you saw that interesting Wild Country documentary. Even in the Scientology community, where all of these are just, they're such beautiful truths. And yet it's all mixed in there with our human shadow material.
I love the way you're talking about that with the shadow, right? That really solidifies it for me. And your fine line work is so fascinating to me, because I think even those of us who have been on the planet a while and doing this kind of work for a while, we still have to discern sometimes what is ours, what is theirs. Am I picking this up? I've got a teenage daughter still at home, and it's like, where do I let her be her, and where do I have to say I'm your mom, right? It's all this discernment. It's all this fine line all the way through life. And being in integrity, like, I believe this, and yet she believes something else. And how can we both be in integrity with it, right?
That's right.
Complicated.
It is. And then when we bring in other modalities like human design, where we need to transcend the mind, right? It's really not even about kind of figuring out what our belief systems or our core values are, but it's about living from an even deeper place that is not necessarily intellectual at all. And so that's its own fine line. And I have a teenage daughter at home as well. And I totally know that mother fine line, when you work with human design, design, for example, like really wanting to trust and encourage and empower her to trust in her own inner authority. And at the same time, my own impulse might be saying something different, and how to negotiate that. It's
and how much inner authority do you really understand within yourself when you're 16? Because there is a place where at 16 you don't always, right? So going back to your teachings, I love that you pull in gene keys and shadow work and wisdom work and integrity work and human design work. And you're going to be talking about all this at the conference, and how to really navigate through your own integrity and being who you are in the world. You've written a bunch of books. You have a beautiful card deck. Hold up one of your books for us for a minute.
Well, I can hold the deck up for you. Like this.
Yes, I would love that.
This is the front of the deck, and this is the guidebook. You can get a larger guidebook. It's the Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck. And I actually picked 2 Wisdom Keepers for us today.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I just, like I said before we started, I tend to be a little on the introverted, shy side, even though it's not that noticeable to people. So I usually get a little nervous before interviews. And so I call upon the Wisdom Keepers, who I drew and kind of channeled the stories for, but they came for me. Like, I feel like they are my helpers. And the ones that I got were the Wisdom Keeper of Patience and Equality.
So tell me your interpretation of those 2 cards today.
For today, well, first of all, can I just thank you for including me in this?
Yeah.
Because I have some like sadness about my relationship with the human design community over the years, because I started maybe, 14 years ago, and I went through the whole Jovian Archive analyst training, and I'll circle back to the cards. But at the very end of my analyst training, when I was about to get certified, I was asked to sign a contract saying that I would not combine what I learned with anything else.
Oh,
that I would
interesting.
only teach the human design in its pure essence. And I could not sign that contract, because that's not, I'm a 3/5, I'm experimental, I'm constantly weaving things together. You too? I thought you might be, given your resume, which is amazing. Like, you've just done everything under the sun.
I have to just keep doing stuff.
Yeah. It's like, I got to keep transmuting and weaving and synthesizing and transcending and including. And so I said I didn't do it. And this is an experience I've had in many different settings, where I've gone through a whole education, and at the very end, I wasn't able to sign the contract that would limit or constrict me in my freedom going forward, which is also something that's connected to the walking a fine line, is this dance between structure and freedom, and that's been a big theme in my life. But anyway, I wanted to thank you, because I felt so sad, because in so many years I've dedicated to learning about human design and helping it in its evolvement and teaching it. And I've never been invited in to share a journey or what I have to offer in any human design context. Even though I had a really good relationship with my teacher, I loved my teacher, and but they couldn't promote me or support me or.
Yes. So there's probably something here, and I'm not sure that we want to dive into this publicly, right?
Okay.
But there's probably something here about the shadow piece with human design too, because that's work that you delved into deeply, that you understand. So of course that's going to come up as one of your teachers.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think that's an interesting thing at some point we could all think about in the human design community. Where's the shadow here, and what's the pieces of here that's not inclusive? And I'm so glad you incorporate other things, because life is not black and white and this is the only way. I mean, it's just
and ironically, no, it's not. And ironically, when people genuinely follow their design, they're gonna show different colors. Like we're gonna evolve. We're gonna take things in different directions and open up new doors. That's the whole point, right? As a collective, human design liberates us. We are unique, authentic selves, which we're gonna break rules. Like that's the beauty of it. And like you're saying, that's kind of what I was hoping. I still haven't totally kind of figured out what I'm going to say during the event, but I am wanting to look at the gifts and the shadows of each of these main kind of streams of learning and life experience that I've had in the human design experience. For me, it's different for everybody, right? But for me, right. I encountered my own shadow in relation to it, and a shadow that I have experienced in some settings in human design of a rigidity, a fear of the fear of someone taking it and going crazy with it and taking it in the wrong direction, and that creating a contraction around the evolution experience.
So if you think about science or art, or even our teenagers going through school, you have to learn something a very specific way, and it's very rigid. Like even math, you have to learn it this way, even if you can figure it out in your head a different way. In art, right. I tell this story all the time. When I was taking some painting classes 2 decades ago, we had to paint 100 pairs because we had to learn how to paint the pair. But by the time you got to pair 87, you were off the charts creative. Yeah. Right? But you had to learn it
that's right
way first. And so there's some parallels here with human design too. I think there's a structure, you learn it. Once you know it so well that you can dive in and come out the other side and then incorporate like you do with other teachings because you know it so well. That's rather than just picking and choosing which pieces you want to learn or which pieces are useful. Because there's right. a danger in that.
There's a shadow in that too, right? And right. kind of plucking and kind of shallow junk food, approaching workshops like, oh, I'll take a little here, a little there.
There's like, oh, my body says it wants lots of sugar today, and your muscle testing. Yeah, sugar. Well, there's a shadow in that if you're suddenly only eating sugar rather than a little piece of chocolate today.
Absolutely. I'm with you 1,000%. There's always a shadow on both sides. Right? There's always a shadow in both areas, and we need to learn our skills before we can improvise.
Yeah.
Right? And improvising is when we take sort of like a deep core knowledge and we pour it through our unique prism. And each of us because the way that human design would come through you is like perfect for some people. Like they need it to come through you. And if you're too constricted because you're trying to follow rules or do it like Ra would do it or like someone else would do it, your people aren't going to get what they need, right? They need it to come through you. And that's right? Like, when do we know we have enough of a stable foundation to be able to improvise and combine, and that's an art form. That in itself is an art form.
And you do it so well. You do it so well.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the cards. I want to know about the cards. The 2 cards you pulled for us today.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that's why. Okay. So it made me grateful to you, including me in this, and it also made me grateful to you for your light, from what I can see looking in your website, because you need to have the things that I have really struggled with, which is why I need these 2 cards. So today I was just going for a walk with my daughter, who's so sweet and wise. And I was just sharing a little bit of the despair I've been feeling lately, both personally and then on a collective level, of when we, like people like myself, like yourself, people who are really trying to make a better place, work so hard and come up against so many obstacles, and this is the same on the in the political realm, and I don't have to get into specifics, or the environmental, whatever spirit we want to create this new earth, and I think sometimes it's a lot easier to destroy than it is to actually build. So those of us who are not just trying to build something beautiful, but we're trying to embody core virtues and values while we do it, it's a slower process. So the patients comes in, and where we need to have, or I need to have the long view, like even beyond my lifetime view. When I get impatient with myself.
The card, the patient's card. Yeah, so beautiful. It's so beautiful. How much of this is in your design, the impatience, and how much of it is just personality? And is it different? Or is it all the same?
I don't even know how to answer a question like how much is in someone's design, because you can look at definition as being evidence that something is in someone's design, but if it's open, we're more likely to be interested in it and like explore it and learn about it and be drawn to it. So, and then there are other ways that it can show up. Like, so for example, if I have like a defined spleen like I have, then that, I'm used to, sort of intuitive, spontaneous action. And so that might give me a certain kind of impatience when it comes to other areas in my design, which has to do with really protecting and serving the tribe, the human community. So I think that there's so many ways that I could imagine that impatience or patience could pop up in my chart, even though I don't have line 5 defined. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It was not really a trick question, but
kind
of a trick question.
No, I know, but it's interesting. Well, anyway, so the other piece is equality. So like part of my life has been around kind of psychology and counseling, expressive arts, and learning different systems or empowering tools to help people. But I've also been kind of like a sacred activist in my life, where I do care about equity. I care about how humans treat each other. And the highest form of equality, according to the Gene Keys, which kind of takes the gates of the human design system and looks at it from a multi-frequency perspective, right? Yep. So you might have a gate and you could live it out through a shadow from a fear perspective, or you could really be coming from a place of service and a gift perspective, or it could really be like expanding into a state of oneness. And that would be the city. He would call that the city, which is a Sanskrit term. But anyway, the city of equality is tenderness. And I am feeling such a need to be tender with myself and humanity these days, because I'm probably going to cry right now, because we're doing the best that we can. And these are hard times.
It feels like you pulled these cards for humanity.
Yeah. Like, just can we have patience, but not without resignation? And we work towards equality, but be tender with ourselves in the ways that's difficult. As humans, it is difficult to really know what that means and to feel it in the core of ourselves, to really honor ourselves and others and transcend that whole concept of other.
Yeah.
Because we've got other aspects of our animal brain that for our survival don't operate in that way. So we are really with one foot in two worlds right now, and we need patience and tenderness to carry us through. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I'll make sure that I put links up to your cards and your books in the show notes too, so everybody watching. And of course, to come join us at the Human Design Conference. One way or another, join us. It's happening in September. We just don't know how much of it's going to be live. And maybe there'll be a smaller live component. We just don't know yet.
Sure. We will see. We will trust the signs as you receive them. It's going to be on my birthday.
I don't know that I knew that. Happy birthday.
Yeah, not today, the event.
The event. Yeah, okay. Yeah, great.
Yes.
Good. We'll make sure that we at least light a candle or something.
Aww,
fun.
Very sweet.
Fun. So I want to ask you, you've self-published all these things. That's not an easy feat. As you know, I'm co-owner of a publishing company. We publish books, we publish courses, and we're publishing cards this year. The cards have been the most frustrating thing to learn as a publisher, but you have got gorgeous work. Tell me just a little bit about your journey self-publishing, and if there was like one or two things you want your audience who are considering publishing for themselves, what mistakes they should look out for.
Oh my, how can I count the ways? So
a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions in there.
Yeah,
so.
Well, they're good questions. I will say in the publishing world, I've had this same dance around, how there are so many benefits, of course, with a real publisher, including the support and the professionalism and just, it's like teamwork, right? You get the teamwork involved with that.
Right.
And then again, I had this liberation-seeking part of my authentic nature and this desire to continually change and transmute and update and enhance, and so that I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, I'm like all into self-publishing, but it felt right authentically to go that path, even though it has been difficult. It has been difficult, and I haven't had the financial resources to hire a formatter or an editor or a website designer or learn how to put my stuff up on Amazon, or I've had to do all of it myself. I will say I did have a woman named Ann Cameron who helped me a few years back really kind of understand how Amazon works, which was a huge thing.
Yeah. And it changes all the time. I mean, my team and I are in Amazon every day, and there's something new.
Yeah, and I'm buying your book, by the way. I just found it today. Your Amazon for Authors. I'm buying that today.
Good. Thank you.
So, yeah, no, you kind of have like all the missing pieces. I have so many missing pieces. But then I've been working with this wonderful woman named Pam DeLeo for the past 2 years, who's just like, she's just holding me, and she'll help me with proofing or help me make decisions and prioritizing and stuff. So I guess one of the things I would definitely recommend is, even if you can't like afford the highest possible coaching expert, like find help. Like don't do it all by yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it is.
There's so many moving pieces, and people just forget them and don't know that they forgot them because they didn't know them.
They don't know them. And if you can get someone like you, if you can afford to get someone like you who not only has all of that background that you have, but you have like a life dedicated to supporting people as individuals who aren't all the same. Like even like, like how I market as an introvert might be different than someone who's an extrovert. And that's something I've really struggled with. I enjoy the creative production part, but the marketing part has been so, I really needed these guys. It's been very challenging for me.
So what has worked for you in marketing? Because that's one of the big questions I get all the time. Is someone will say to me after they've published a book and say, okay, I published, now what? And sometimes I look at the book and say, well, we have to go fix some things first. But in your case, you've got beautiful work. So now what's the thing that has worked for you the most? Is it building your community? Is it doing podcasting? Is it live courses, live events?
Yeah, which I should be doing more of. I would say, because I have not been someone that's been good at following templates for marketing, that the things that probably have worked for me has to do with like consistently offering things from my heart all the time for years. Yeah. So like for many years, like I had a blog or I did a vlog, I had videos all the time where I would just I would sit like this and talk into the computer and just share something from my heart, just put it up. Like I've given so much away freely that I think people got to know me as a person.
I love that.
And then also just relationship building. Relationship building has been my way because that's an authentic way for me. And so over time, as I just cultivate relationships with other people and I support them, that's built some goodwill. I think that's just basically built some goodwill, and I'm starting to feel the streams of that goodwill coming back. And it's been hard because I didn't fit into a niche. I wasn't a human design analyst. Right. I wasn't a Gene Keys ambassador. Even in terms of my expressive arts therapy background, I didn't get licensed because I didn't want to work in that particular way. I wanted to integrate too many modalities for that to be okay. So I didn't get the support of the schools that I went to. So it was really through my spiritual tribal connections and really feeding those relationships, and then just continually just finding authentic ways to share from my heart, that I think over time collectively built a dedicated following of people who are interested in knowing what I'm up to, where I get to just keep putting new things out there. And because they know that I did that, they're more open to the fact that I'm doing something else.
You know, that's exactly your two cards that you pulled today too, right? It's patience and the tenderness, being compassionate with your audience and the people who need you. Yeah. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see. People say, I'm going to do a big launch, and they expect that to carry them. And a launch is a great start, but it's a springboard. Once you land in the water, you still got to swim. So using that mixed metaphors there. So what's the one thing that you would tell someone new going into publishing? Like you said, get help, but is there like one mistake or one thing that you'd really warn people about?
See, this is where I run into trouble, because we all have our gifts and our shadows, right? So we all have our places where we feel confident and places where we need to stretch ourselves, and they're different for each of us, right? So for me, I'm good at the swimming, but I have really struggled with the launch, right? So I would need support from someone who can help me launch and have some kind of a follow-up strategy. That has been an area, like a hole for me, but for someone else, they might feel great about the launch, but not really know about, how to just swim in the...
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. I get questions about things like ISBNs and book covers and more technical things, but I love your answer, right? So what's the one thing that you've loved about self-publishing and doing it yourself? The creative process, maybe, because you sort of said that earlier.
Yes, the creative process, and I have not had to make the kinds of compromises that I have seen other authors make who have worked inside of a more kind of traditional publishing setting. Yeah. Also, I feel so free to do whatever I want with what I create, and I love that. And I am learning that a lot of people who have worked with, those big publishers are not getting the kind of support they used to get.
No,
they're not getting, and they're surprised, they're shocked by it. Like,
yeah, they are. Now, I have to say something here, because I'm a publishing company, right? So I have to jump in and defend myself a little bit. That one of the things that we do is we help guide authors and creators to put out their best work without compromising, but still using our expertise to maybe help polish it a little bit more than they would normally. And then the other thing is, because everyone on our team comes from the online world, we have a lot of marketing expertise. So we really do help with marketing. So I just wanted to put that out there, that when we're talking about publishers, it's not everybody in the universe.
No, you're the kind that we need.
Right.
We need. I'm talking about, I don't know, like, what do you give me some of the big names?
Well, like Random House or HarperCollins or Penguin or any of those big Simon & Schuster, any of those really big ones. They're struggling because they're going through big changes.
That's right. So I was more, I think we all need publishers like you.
Well, you and I need to talk about a book, right? We need to talk about a project together. Any last words to leave our audience with, Rosie?
Oh, okay. Well, I am coming out with a new book, which is in relation to the theme that I'll be talking about whenever the thing happens, and something we've already talked about. It's called The Wisdom Wheel of Integrity.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so I'm looking at like this balancing act of what it means to be in integrity. And so there's the loving kindness. We need to be kind and loving towards others, but that needs to be balanced by self-respect. You know, because if we're just kind and we don't have self-respect, we fall into codependency. But if we're too self-respecting and we kind of know what our values are, but we're not nice, we just turn into jerks. Like I know a lot of
fine line again.
It's fine line. And then on these two sides, we've got like the courageous self-trust, which for me, human design is all about, like that capacity to really like break through our conditioning and really act in alignment with our hearts and with what the world needs and where our capacities and the need of the world intersect, even if people don't get it. And then there's the reverent surrender that has to balance that out, because sometimes, you know, we don't change the world by using the sheer force of our goodwill, right? There has to be some humility around that and a capacity to step back and see that there is an intelligence unfolding inside and around us that's so bigger than our small selves could ever comprehend. And then at the heart of that integrity wheel is artfulness, is creativity, and our own unique way of kind of doing this dance. And it's going to be different for everybody. So I guess I wanted to just drop that little seed.
I love that. You'll let us know when the book's out, right?
I'll let you know when the book's out. Yeah. And the course is already out. The course is already out. And we will talk, Michelle, because you have what people like me need.
Yeah. And you have what I need. Right? Content to publish. So you can find out more at rosyaronson.com, ROSYARONSON.com. I'll put that in the show notes.
And actually, I would say that my main website is wisdomkeepers.net. That's the one that I normally send people to, just so when we put it out.
Okay, wisdomkeepers.net. I'll make sure to put that up. Thank you so much. I loved having you. It's been really a fun conversation today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for taking the time and for inviting me into your world.